Hello everyone, my name is Kim Scott. I am an associate broker here at JLA Realty and part of the leadership team for the brokerage. I am working on a series of contracts and forms that are most commonly used for realtors here in the state of Texas. And we are going to kick off this series with the information about brokerage services form. In all of our forms, either in the top right corner or the bottom right corner, you will see a date, and that is the date that that form was put into effect. It's very important to keep an eye on those dates as forms do change frequently, so you want to make sure you're using the most up-to-date version at all times. This form, information about brokerage services, as you can see at the top, Texas law does require all real estate license holders to give this information about brokerage services to all prospective buyers, tenants, sellers, and landlords. And that is supposed to be given at the time of the first substantial communication regarding real estate. This also needs to be displayed anywhere that you're advertising, and it also needs to be included in your email signature above your signature block. So if you have any trouble adding that, don't hesitate to reach out. I'd be happy to help you get that done. At the top, it covers what types of real estate license holders there are. You can either be a broker or a sales agent, and it defines those two roles. And then it also addresses the broker's minimum duties required by law. We've got to always put the interest of the clients above all others, including the broker. Inform the client of any material information about the property or the transaction that the broker is aware of. Answer the client's questions and present any offers or counter offers from the client, and treat all parties to a real estate transaction honestly and fairly. Then it addresses written agreements. It says that they're required in certain situations. I would argue that written is always going to be preferred. Make sure that it's in writing and that it's clearly established to all parties. And how can a license holder represent a party in a real estate transaction? It goes through three representation options here. As an agent for the owner, be that the seller or the landlord. You can also be an agent for the buyer or the tenant. And then the third option is you can be an agent for both or intermediary. There are also two types of intermediary. You can have intermediary without appointments, and that's going to mean that the same realtor is representing both parties in a transaction, either the landlord and the tenant or the seller and the buyer. The second type of intermediary would be with appointments, meaning that the brokerage is representing both sides, but there are two separate agents representing the parties. So if a JLA Realty agent is representing the seller and a different JLA agent happens to bring the buyer, then they're going to be considered intermediary with appointments because it's two separate agents under the same brokerage. The very final part of this document addresses if a license holder can show property to a buyer or tenant without representing the buyer or the tenant, and it gives a couple of examples here. So the broker has not agreed with the buyer or tenant, either orally or in writing, to represent them. The broker is not otherwise acting as the buyer or tenant's agent at the time of showing the property. The broker does not provide the buyer or tenant opinions or advice regarding the property in a real estate transaction. And the broker does not perform any other act of real estate brokerage for that buyer or tenant. Now, if you are going to be showing an unrepresented buyer or tenant, you still need to have an unrepresented buyer agreement signed prior to showing that property. The exception would be if you are showing your own listing or you're showing a listing that is listed by your brokerage. Now, underneath at the bottom, this is where you're going to fill out the license holder contact information. So this is going to be provided to your client or to an unrepresented buyer that you're showing property to. And what you're going to want to do is go in here on the very top line. you're going to be putting the name of the sponsoring broker. So this is going to be your brokerage company. So in our example, if you work for JLA Realty, then JLA Realty would go here. And then the license number for the company, along with the primary email address and the primary phone number of the brokerage. Your second line is going to be the actual designated broker. So this is going to be a person. In our case, again, with JLA Realty, our designated broker is John Altick. His name would go here, license number for John, email address, and phone number. And then on your third line, this is going to be a licensed supervisor if applicable. So if you work on a team, your team leader may be your licensed supervisor. If you work at a branch office, maybe that branch manager is your licensed supervisor. And then their license number, email address, and phone number would go on that third line. Now, this bottom line is going to be the sales agent or associate. So that's going to be your contact information. So your name, your license number, email, and phone is going to go down there on that fourth line. Now, below that, you'll see a spot for buyer, tenant, seller, or landlord initials and date. Now, if you're using one of the form libraries like Zip Forms, Transaction Desk, or dotloop, you're going to want to make sure that you select the proper version of this form, either the selling side or the listing side. That way it's going to populate the initials correctly when you go to send it for digital signature. That is the breakdown of the information about brokerage services form. Thank you so much for tuning in, and stay tuned as we create more videos for all of the most commonly used Texas realtor forms and amendments and addenda and all of that fun stuff. So I hope to see you again on the next video. Thanks for tuning in.